as I just said, the weather in Nainital changes faster than our weekend plans. Sunny optimism 2 days ago, and today the clouds have clearly changed their minds. Good morning to all of you present here. Welcome to day 3 of the Nainital Literature Festival. I'm Prableen Saluja Verma, and it's wonderful to be sharing this morning with all of you. When we began this journey on day 1, we opened not just a festival, but a space for stories, for ideas, and for voices that needed to be heard. And what extraordinary days it has been. From thought-provoking conversations to moving poetry recitals, from debates that challenged perspectives to stories that touched the soul. The Nainital Literature Festival has once again reminded us that literature is not merely written, it is lived. Over the past 2 days here in Nainital, we have met piquant minds of authors and conversationalists, reflecting our ideas, our doubts, our humor, and sometimes even our contradictions. The mountains of Nainital have listened patiently, and I truly believe they are holding every whispered poem and every applauded sentence in their silent embrace. As Jorge Luis Borges beautifully said, I have always imagined that paradise will be a kind of library. And looking at this gathering of readers and writers, one might say, for these few days at least, Nainital came very close. Day 1 was about beginnings, day 2 deepened their dialogue. And today, day 3 is about celebration, culmination, and carrying these words back with us into our lives. Now, with gratitude for the brilliant speakers, organizers, participants, sponsors, and each one of you who made these 2 days unforgettable, I warmly welcome you all to day 3 of the Nainital Literature Festival. Of course, there's a list of sponsors I need to thank, and we will do so in the sessions forward. Now, to begin the day, we turn to a deceptively simple question. Have we actually learned the right lessons from history, or perhaps the wrong ones? The interesting thing about history is that every generation is convinced it has finally understood it correctly, which makes this conversation particularly intriguing, because history is never about the past. It shapes how we understand the present and sometimes how we argue about the future. Now, of course, when you ask a question like this, you need people who are not afraid to disagree politely, passionately, and perhaps a little enthusiastically. And we certainly have a remarkable panel for that today. Joining us are Gurcharan, one of India's most respected public intellectuals and authors, John Zubrzycki, historian and writer whose work beautifully explores India's past and cultural imagination, Professor Pushpesh Pant, historian, scholar, and a widely respected commentator on India's history and culture, Bhupendra Chaubey, senior journalist and one of the most incisive political interviewers on television, Ms. Subhashini Ali, veteran political leader and an important voice in India's public life. A distinguished group of writers, thinkers, and with so many sharp minds on one stage, I suspect history might get thoroughly examined today. I now hand the conversation over to our panelists. Please.
What a great pleasure indeed it is to be here in this absolutely scenic environment of Nainital. Amitabh Baghel and his lovely team deserve all the applause from our side to be in a position to put up multiple venues at such short notices. Here we're talking about history. Have we learned the right lessons or the wrong lessons? And look at the present, how quickly you can learn lessons from what is happening right now as of this moment. Since we have such an eclectic set of people all around me, I look forward to an insightful conversation, and we have young students with us from top educational institutions here in Nainital, all of whom have a very direct stake. The proposition which has been put up before us today, have we learned the wrong lessons from history? Let me slightly rephrase it. Have we learned any lessons from history? Or is it that the only lesson we've learned from history is that we've not learned anything? Is it that we even know today, in times of artificial intelligence, in terms of all our thinking being driven by algorithms, is what existed as a historical fact, is it being converted into a historical opinion, historical interpretation of a certain perceived fact, which could be open for deliberations hundreds of years down the line today? So let me first start with my extreme left, Pushpesh Pant, well-known scholar, author, teacher, writes on multiple things from food to politics to history. Always a pleasure to be in the company of Mr. Pant. Pushpesh, let me straight away give you the mic first, and let me ask you to respond to this direct proposition. Have we learned the wrong lessons from history, and is that the reason why the world, as we see it today, in times of this very, very strong geopolitical conflicts which are staring at us in our faces, is it because we've not learned the right lessons, we've got the wrong lessons from history?
I hope you allow me to start with something which is contrapuntal. Have the Indians ever made an effort to learn what history is? If you mix up history with facts, fantasy, fairy tales, myths, legends, and treat that as history, then there is no question of learning any lessons from anything. Now, I am not underestimating the role of myths and legends in our tradition, which of course now these days is a pretty contested tradition, not the Sanatani tradition, but the really ancient Indian tradition of Shastrartha, difference of opinion. Itihas Puran was there. And most people lose it in translation that Itihas was Itihas, thus it was, and not history as we understand it today, discipline of history. And Puran was, dear friend Vivek Dev Roy is not there. Purans were a different kind of genealogy, history telling, which passed off as history for a long time. Now the trouble today is that how do you learn a lesson from a discipline you don't know anything about? You say this is our history. It is not history at all.
A myth or a legend being converted into history.
Bhupen bhai, what I would say, a myth is popular history. It is oral tradition. It is folk history of sorts. It is an oral archive which can be used as a source of a historical imagination. But like there are many histories, let's say Marxist history, nationalist history, balanced history, or the much maligned JNU Tukde Tukde gang history, you have the problem. The myths also have various interpretations. There is no one myth which gives you the answer. So I have a problem with the proposition itself that if we have a consensus of this is history, and I'm not arguing in favor of the professional historians and their discipline, people will still be governed by myths.
No, but you said, you touched upon something very important. I genuinely believe that if you do not consistently continue to reinterpret history, it can't be a static process. It has to be a process of evolution. But that process of evolution has to be based on some facts, and those facts, if they are myth, as being popularly sold as history.
This takes us back to E.H. Carr. What are facts? Each person has a fact which the person chooses. Now, and what is fantasy? Is everybody's fantasy. वो मुंगेरी लाल के हसीन सपने भी हो सकते हैं. वो ये हमारी core civilizational value भी. Is there an agreement on that? What is the core? Ultimately, India is a universe, the subcontinent I mean, which is diversity. Diversity of interpretations of history and myths, both. So people may be led easily by fantasies and myths, chase a mirage, but there still has to be diversity there.
Okay, let's hear from you, Subhashini. You travel across the country, you travel across the world. आजकल तो देखिए हम जहां भी सुनते हैं, हम ये सुनते हैं कि भारत, हम विश्व गुरु हैं, और इस विश्व गुरु का इतिहास, हमारा history, it is such a rich history that we are being very dishonest about not giving due appreciation, due salutations to that history. Where do you stand on that?
देखिए, जो आपने टॉपिक दिया है कि आर वी लर्निंग द रॉन्ग हिस्ट्री, तो सबसे पहले तो हमें ये समझना चाहिए कि हम हिस्ट्री किससे सीख रहे हैं. और मैं उन लोगों से के बारे में ही नहीं कह रही हूँ जो कॉलेज यूनिवर्सिटी वगैरह जाते हैं. जो हमारे आम लोग हिंदुस्तान से, वो किससे हिस्ट्री सीख रहे हैं? एक तो जैसा कि पुष्पेश जी ने कहा, जो मिथ्स हैं, जो तमाम बाजार में भी आपको गीता प्रेस की भी ये तमाम चीजें, अमर चित्र कथा और ये सब मिलता है, उससे सीख रहे हैं.
Is that history?
मैं कह रही हूँ, they think it's history. That's not the point. Is not what we think.
Or shall we break that into saying his story? So that's a story.
No, I want to say something more than this.
Yes.
लेकिन इसके अलावा जो बहुत जबरदस्त तरीके से लोगों को हिस्ट्री सिखा रहे हैं, आपको मालूम है वो कौन है?
WhatsApp University.
नहीं, वो टूरिस्ट स्पॉट्स पे गाइड्स हैं. जो गाइड्स लोगों को ले जाते हैं, वो उनको बताते हैं हिस्ट्री इस जगह की. और वो क्या बताते हैं? जो उनकी समझ में आता है वो बताते हैं, और जो उनको लगता है उन लोगों को अच्छा लगेगा वो बताते हैं. जैसे कि मैं खुद गई थी आगरा फोर्ट, तो वहां पर एक बहुत बड़ा दरवाजा है जिसमें चिनार के पत्ते का पैटर्न है, और वो गाइड लोगों को समझा रहा था कि यही वो फाटक है जब अब उसने किसी बादशाह का नाम दिया, जब सोमनाथ को उन्होंने तोड़ा, आई थिंक कोई खिलजी या somebody, तो ये फाटक वो लेकर के आया और उसने इस दुर्ग में ये फाटक लगा दिया. तो मैंने उससे इतना ही पूछा कि हाँ बड़ी अच्छी कहानी है, लेकिन क्या सोमनाथ में चिनार के पेड़ होते हैं? अरे कहने आप पता नहीं कहाँ की बातें कर रही हैं. ये तो मेरा कहने का मतलब है कि जब आम लोग हजारों की संख्या में, लाखों की संख्या में इस तरह का इतिहास इस तरह के लोगों से सीखेंगे तो क्या सीखेंगे. लेकिन दैट्स इन अ लाइटर वेन. इन अ मोर सीरियस वे आई वांट टू से कि इस तरह से हमको बड़े भारी पढ़े लिखों ने भी इतिहास सिखाया है, क्योंकि मतलब हाल के दिनों तक हमारा इतिहास कौन लिखता था? वो लोग जो जिनको परमिशन थी पढ़ने
HRD मिनिस्ट्री,
नहीं
IS ऑफिसर्स, मतलब अगर भारत के संदर्भ में आप बात कर रही हैं.
मैं तो पुरानी बात कर रही हूँ.
अच्छा.
आजकल तो इसकी बात ही मैं नहीं कर रही हूँ. ब्राह्मणों ने इतिहास लिखा है हमारे देश का, क्योंकि वही लिख सकते थे. और आज जो आप कह रहे हैं इसको इरेज कर रहे हैं, उसको इरेज कर रहे हैं, तो भैया इरेजर के मास्टर माइंड तो वो लोग थे. आप मुझे बताइए, हम और आप अच्छे स्कूलों में जाके पढ़े, अच्छे कॉलेजेस में भी पढ़े, लेकिन हमने कभी भी ये सवाल, मैंने कभी ये सवाल अपने हिस्ट्री टीचर से नहीं पूछा कि भाई हमको अशोक के बारे में अंग्रेजों के आने के बाद क्यों पता चला. इसके पहले इस देश को पता ही नहीं था कि अशोक नाम का कोई सम्राट था. ऐसा क्यों? भाई छोटे छोटे राजा जो मतलब 4 किलोमीटर की रेडियस में राज करते थे, आला उदल, मतलब हमने grown up hearing that, और इवन महाभारत उसकी भी रेडियस बहुत कम थी, वगैरह वगैरह वगैरह. इतने डिटेल में इन सारे लोगों के बारे में लिखा, छोटे छोटे लोगों के बारे में बहुत कुछ लिखा. लेकिन अशोक जो पहला सम्राट था, जिसका पहला साम्राज्य था जो वहां से लेकर के वहां तक गया, उसके बारे में नहीं पता. क्यों नहीं लिखा? उसको क्यों इरेज कर दिया? इसलिए कि वो ब्राह्मणवादी नहीं था, वो बौद्ध था. इसलिए उसका इतिहास लोगों को नहीं जानना चाहिए, और इसलिए उनको इरेज कर दिया गया. तो आज हमको सिर्फ यही नहीं समझना है कि हमको क्या गलत सिखाया जा रहा है, ये भी समझना है कि हमको क्या नहीं बताया जा रहा है. और मुझे खुशी है कि लोग ये पूछने लगे हैं, क्योंकि अब जो उन लोगों के वारिस आज हिस्ट्री की किताब में लिख रहे हैं बच्चों के लिए, वो भी बहुत कुछ हटा रहे हैं, वो भी कुछ मिटा रहे हैं. और इसके अलावा मैं आपको बताऊं, एक नॉर्थ इंडियन नॉर्थ इंडियन विचारधारा है जो भी है हावी रही है, जिसकी वजह से दक्षिण भारत का इतिहास और दक्षिण भारत की जो जबरदस्त उपलब्धियां थी, मतलब आपको रोमन गोल्ड कॉइन्स मिल रहे हैं लाखों की संख्या में पूरे साउथ इंडिया में. ये क्यों आए यहाँ? इसलिए कि हमारे साउथ इंडिया के जो किंगडम्स थे वो सीफेरिंग किंगडम्स थे, वो ट्रेडिंग किंगडम्स थे. उनके जहाज पूरी दुनिया में जाते थे, यहाँ की सामान की मांग थी बाकी दुनिया में, और उनका सोना हमारे देश में आता था. लेकिन किसको पता? तो जब एक तरफ हमारी सरकार कह रही है कि हमें अपने पाश्चात्य का महिमा मंडन करना चाहिए, तो यार किसका पाश्चात्य और कौन सा पाश्चात्य, ये भी तो हमको सवाल करना चाहिए. आपको इंडस वैली सिविलाइजेशन तब तक नहीं अच्छी लगेगी जब तक आप इसको साबित नहीं कर दोगे कि ये आर्यों ने बनाया. आपको अशोक नहीं अच्छे लगते हैं, अब वो कहते हैं कि नहीं साहब, बौद्ध धन की वजह से हम लोग कायर बन गए, इसलिए हम लोगों ने कभी किसी जो आक्रमणकारी था उसका विरोध नहीं किया। तो ये जो सिखाया जा रहा है ये उसी तरह का इतिहास है जो हजारों सालों से हमको सिखाया जा रहा है। जो महत्वपूर्ण बातें हैं जिन पर हमको गर्व होना चाहिए वो
हमें पता ही
उससे
नहीं।
हटाया जा रहा है, ये जानबूझ के हटाया जा रहा है।
But that's the story of politics. That's what I say, that history in each generation will be reinterpreted, repurposed.
अरे पता तो
But
चले।
but that's what I'm saying. अगर आपको एक बेसिक तथ्य लाइन अगर समाज के सामने है, आप उस तथ्य को के ऊपर आप बार बार जा सकते हैं, उसके ऊपर चिंतन मनन कर सकते हैं।
समझा नहीं है। अगर आपको बताया ही नहीं गया कि अशोक नाम का सम्राट था तो आप उसका इंटरप्रिटेशन कैसे करोगे, आप उसको कैसे समझोगे, आप उसकी कामयाबी कैसे समझोगे? तो ये जो एक जानबूझ करके
रोका जा रहा है,
हजारों सालों से हमारे ही इतिहास को छुपाया जा रहा है, हमसे उसको दूर किया जा रहा है, इसके खिलाफ लड़ना बहुत जरूरी है। और इसलिए मैं कहती हूँ जितनी बातें आज होंगी बात एक ही होनी चाहिए कि भाई पढ़ो, बहुत कुछ पढ़ो, इतिहास के बारे में जो अलग अलग लोगों ने लिखा उसको पढ़ो, ज्ञान अर्जित करो। अगर तुमको ज्ञान परोसा नहीं जा रहा है तो खुद ज्ञान अर्जित करो, उसका मौका आज आपको मिला है, जरूर इस काम को करो।
Very valid points. And I think Subhashini you're right that आपको पता ही नहीं चलेगा अगर, और इसलिए मैं बार-बार the word that I'm using is तथ्य, fact. अगर वो fact erase हो गया है, वो fact आपके सामने नहीं है, there's little that you can do. But let's for the time being, let's move purely from a political landscape to the economic landscape of history. And who better than Gurcharan Das here, who's edited an entire series with Penguin Publications about understanding the economic history of India. So Gurcharan, why don't you help us understand? Subhashini ji's point is absolutely clear. There are certain facets of Indian history which have been kept away for purely political reasons. But let's put the economic lens. Have we learned the right lessons of the economic?
So, in fact, what she just said about finding these coins, Roman coins, actually Roman coins were used in the south. One ship from Rome would arrive every day in a port in South India. And Pliny, the senator, got up in 78 AD and he told the Roman senators, look, stop wearing those togas. They're made of Indian cotton. Stop your wives from using pepper, this terrible thing that we are using in our food every day. Why? Because Rome is losing 2/3 of its gold and silver to India. Or why don't you sell them something that we make? Why aren't they buying anything of ours?
Right.
Anyway, my point is that we, right through history, and now it's the economic historian Madison has actually enumerated. We have numbers to show what a wonderful trading power India was. And, you know, we may say, proclaimed Sone ki Chidiya, etc., but these are the facts that she's also talking about, which I think are very important. My point is, and by the way, right through from the Roman times, right through until the British, until the 19th century almost, India had a positive balance of trade, right through. And Vasco da Gama, when he first arrives from Portugal, Indians don't buy anything made in Europe, but the Portuguese buy everything, and the poor king who had financed the voyage lost all his gold because it landed up in India. So these are real stories, and it shows really what an open society we were, how we encouraged trade, that we were entrepreneurial.
Scared of Kala Pani.
And so what I'm trying to say, I could tell you many stories.
Yeah, sure.
We have these volumes that which tell these stories.
Why don't you just hold the books for the camera?
Well,
and tell us a bit
there was
about it,
Arthashastra which began it all, which actually showed that the just tax rate was 15%.
15%.
1/6, Shat Bhaga was the kings due, but only if we could prove they had spent it on what we would today call infrastructure. He had he had to show that he had shown it, and not the 97.8 tax rate that we had at one time in our country. Anyway, this is about Khatri merchants across the trans-Himalayan trade called caravans. I'll just show you a book on the Sindhis and how they were selling anything anywhere. And this is the East India Company, much reviled, and one of the causes why we have this problem. And one dharma of business where he is this American writer, Donald Davis, the Sanskrit scholar, has shown that Indians forgot the difference between lobe and lab.
Lobe and lab.
This is when Nehru was having this conversation with JRD. JRD was telling him in the 50s that now that you've made the state at the commanding heights of business, that this public sector should also make a profit. And Nehru said, Jay, this is just before lunch. Let's not spoil it. Profit's a dirty word. and that's the time when he should have been told that there's a difference between lobe and lab. Anyway, my point is that from the 50s onwards till 91, what we did was we actually closed. We didn't stop in 91. Even today, what we did was then we closed our economy. We closed it because we thought that trade and East India Company had impoverished us. And so this is the wrong lesson from history, that here was a trading country with business communities, which actually, even in the industrial period between 1920s and 1950, we had become the third largest exporter of cottons. We closed all that, and so it's a perfect example of having learned the wrong lessons of history.
So can I just hold you on that, because that's an important point you make. Are you telling us today, there is so much of discourse amongst policymakers about protectionism, protect the domestic producer, and therefore you have to block in certain sectors the external forces coming in. Are you saying that's the wrong lesson that we've got?
No, you see, you got even a first year student of economics understands that you need to import in order to export. And all countries that went from poverty to prosperity in history did it through exports. And the reality is, today, our exports of manufactured goods are less than 2% of global exports.
Right.
So we failed in this area.
Why? Why have we failed?
We failed because we used at that time what is called the infant industry argument. The infant industry argument is that when industry is small, they need protection. But bloody hell, it's 80 years later, and these are still infants. So when Trump called us the king of tariffs, he was right. We had the highest tariffs in the world. Now, what's amazing is that in the last few months of this, what's happened is, with the trade deal with the EU, with the UK, and with the agreement with the US and other trade deals, we have opened our economy.
But we've been forced to open up.
Exactly. But what point is, whether we are forced to or not, but we've done the right thing.
Have we given in more? Because that's the other criticism.
No, sorry?
Have we given in more? The world's changing.
Rubbish. You have to import in order to export. We had this terrible pyramid. Pyramid was that inputs, and this is partly a problem of crony capitalism. That it's the lobbies, but the reality is that our input cost was higher and made us uncompetitive.
Okay.
My point only is that today we really have the opportunity to learn the right lesson from history, whether we are forced to or not. And finally, if we are opening up now, we also today are the most over-regulated country in the world. And that's another area where these 3 deregulation commissions is the best news that we have. And people in charge of these commissions are tough guys.
Well, that's so you know, for all of you listening to Gurcharan Das and enjoying this conversation, just imagine. Here we keep taking great pride in the fact that we've become the 4th largest economy of the world. What is our overall contribution of exports to the global economy? 2%. For 80 years, you've been where you've been. How are you going to become a Vishwaguru and how are you going to exert yourself is a question.
Yeah, let me just one last thing.
Sure.
That, you know, what's the other failure because of this model that I've described, what we have basically skipped the Industrial Revolution. We've gone from a green revolution to an IT revolution. Every country went through the factory stage. And that is why we have the jobs problem.
Yeah.
45% of Indians are still stuck in agriculture, when agriculture needs only 1/3 of those people. And so that is the real today, if you ask me. The real
It's been a challenge. It's been a challenge for a while.
Is the single biggest challenge.
Okay, so let me bring in John then on this one. We've looked at politics.
Yeah.
So we've looked at history through the political lens. We're looking at history through the
Why you keep saying that? That's not
economic lens. No, there's a reason. I'll tell you. John, help us understand from a global landscape.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah?
Thank you.
I mean, for 30 years, 40 years, we were talking about nuclear power, nuclear deterrence. Policy making globally was taking place in the context of you need nuclear power because you need nuclear deterrence, and look at where we are today.
Yep.
Iran is threatening, to blow up anything and everything which is supposed to be close to the Americans. Yeah, we don't know. Americans are, taking a certain position in this kind of world which we are confronted with today. What do you think history really teaches us?
Okay, well, I did prepare a little few notes here, so I'll just
Please,
read from
please,
them, but they do address what the questions you're asking, and I think it was very prescient of Amitabh to pick this as a topic, given the situation in the
Yep.
Middle East now. Couldn't have been more relevant. So when I was thinking about this, I thought, just for fun, I'm going to ask ChatGPT.
What better way to look at history than
to
to
write
why
a
not?
2,000-word argument for and against the notion that we're debating today. Well, it's not really debating. I think we're all in agreement, actually. But and I wasn't being lazy. I just had never done it before, so I tried it again. So, okay. So, in opposing the notion, ChatGPT came up with the following conclusion. And I'll read it out now. To learn the right lessons from history is to accept that the past offers no comfort of inevitability. It demands attention to patterns without assuming repetition, recognition of agency without denying structure, and awareness that the conditions shaping earlier generations continued, but transformed but unresolved in our time. Okay, I won't repeat it because it's just pure waffle. Now, here's the counter-argument. To say we have learned the right lessons from history is not to deny ongoing challenges. It is to acknowledge that the modern world is profoundly informed by historical consciousness. Our laws, institutions, and moral vocabularies bear the imprint of past experience. Okay, that's slightly better, but I don't think it would win a debate, okay, a real debate. So call me old-fashioned, and I know you won't agree with this, Gurcharan, but I think I'm going to avoid AI chatbots like the plague. So let's go back to basics, and I think who better than a real flesh and blood historian such as Barbara Tuchman, who probably inspired me more than any other historian to take up narrative non-fiction as my go-to genre of choice in both my writing and my reading. One of history's enduring mysteries, she pointed out in her classic World War I book, The March of Folly, is why governments pursue policies that run counter to their own interests. And to quote Tuchman, to admit error and cut losses is rare among individuals, unknown among states. And her words are really prescient today. Has Donald Trump ever admitted he was wrong? I don't think so. Correct me if I'm wrong.
But Donald Trump never misses an opportunity, much like other great leaders of our times,
Yeah.
powerful domestic leaders of our times, to tell us how wrong were the previous rulers.
Exactly.
How the founding fathers of American institutions took positions,
Yes.
or founding fathers of Indian institutions took positions which are at odds
Yes.
with what is happening today.
Yes, I
So
know.
there is no way that they'll be talking about their own previous terms, but they'll talk about terms of what? 3 decades, 4 decades
He'll
back.
criticize his predecessors, he'll criticize Biden, he'll criticize Obama. But anyway, and I think that what he prefers to do is to contradict what he has just said before in a series of incomprehensible tweets, even as the lessons of history are staring him in the face. So I think I would argue that in Trump's case, it's not a matter of learning from the mistakes of history, rather that he has no grasp of history at all. If you start a war with another country, you need a plan. And to make a plan, you need to be aware of that country's history.
Yes.
And Trump's clearly forgotten that the last time America intervened in Iran in 1953, it was a CIA, English-sponsored coup to overthrow Mohammad Mossadegh after he nationalized the oil industry. It created a chain of events that led directly to the situation we have today. The return of the Shah resulted in growing authoritarianism that culminated in the 1979 Islamic Revolution and led to the installation of the very regime that Washington is now seeking to overthrow. What he doesn't know is that the ruling clique in Iran today are veterans of asymmetrical wars in Iraq and Syria and are employing the same tactics as they did then, though this time they're using drones, missiles and mines rather than foot soldiers. And we can go back much further. The Parthians employed cavalry archers to attack their opponents quickly and unexpectedly. In the 19th century, the Qajar dynasty, these swarming hit-and-run tactics have remained the mainstay of the Iranian military to this day. They're sending swarms of drones to countries in the Gulf in the same sort of strategies as they did before. He also lacks an understanding of the basics of geography. Now, a few years ago, I was actually camping on a beach in Musandam, which is, Oman. It's bifurcated by the United Arab Emirates, and there's this sort of bit of land at the top of it. It's beautiful. They call it the Norway of the Middle East because of these incredible fjords that you can cruise through. Anyway, camping on that beach at night, you can see oil tankers passing, and you can see the lights of Iran. That's how narrow the Strait of Hormuz is at that point. And, the world, like it or not, depends on the free flow of oil and natural gas for its prosperity and security. And no matter how advanced our digital economy becomes, we're always going to depend on basic logistics such as unhindered sea lanes that enable trade. Look, there's lots of lessons from history that he hasn't learned. Chile in 1973, American backing for forces opposing Salvador Allende contributed to his overthrow, but led the way for General Augusto Pinochet's dictatorship. The 2001 invasion of Afghanistan removed the Taliban. Yet 2 decades and trillions of dollars spent on trying to rebuild rebuild Afghanistan and produce a resilient order failed. And when American forces withdrew, humiliated in 2021, the Taliban returned.
John,
and it is
just want to interrupt you 1 second.
You speak here, Your mic is here.
Oh, okay. That it was also the Americans that had created much of the Taliban and much of the
Yes,
that also should be just
yes, exactly,
Sorry.
yeah. Oh, look, we could debate just on that. And then the 2003 invasion of Iraq was even more destabilizing, justified by false claims that Saddam Hussein possessed weapons of mass destruction.
But Pushpesh, what all these examples that John is giving us, what direction are these arguments taking us? Can I just come, sir? I'm beginning to feel as if a necessary byproduct of a strong individual political brand today, globally, is to first be able to destroy history. of the past, whatever may have happened in the past, to destroy, to ridicule, to question, to make it look bad. If you succeed in making history look bad, you're increasing the probability of you positioning yourself as a far superior and stronger leader today. Would that be a correct assessment?
It's not very fashionable to be a Marxist interpreter of history these days, but George Plekhanov had a very nice pamphlet, very small pamphlet, which is role of individual in history. I very strongly recommend that before we have any debate, or Marx on the 18th Brumaire of Napoleon Bonaparte. He was not writing as a writer or theoretician of capital. If you think what John did was a brilliant survey of global.
Yes.
The question is not formulated, we the Indians have learned wrong lessons from history.
Yeah, sure.
Everyone has learned a wrong lesson.
Which is why I'm looking at it from a global landscape.
The problem there, Bhupendra, is that we tend to forget. He mentioned Barbara Tuchman, who also says when she's talking of the First World War, a distant mirror which shines such reflected light on our times. So unfortunately, the strong man would love that, to erase history, paint everything evil. What about the masses? What about Pablo Neruda's Heights of Machu Picchu? And where was man? Where was man? Why do we forget that veil of the suppressed, oppressed, exploited? Don't they have their mythological imagination to say, get rid of this bastard, pardon my French, Russian, German, all in one, and get rid of this despot, whether he's in India, whether he's in China, whether he's in Soviet Union. Ultimately, Rus started in Kiev, and that is the argument of Putin, and what about the fatherland and the motherland? Come on. This will get me into my pornographic imagination.
I think we'll have around about 5 minutes, and maybe what we can do is, आप लोग phone से questions record करें ना, which can then be interpreted. If anybody has any questions, I just want Subhashini ji to quickly jump into the argument which is being made there by John, and the point that I was making to Pushpesh ji. Now let's come to the basic brass tacks. If I follow up with Pushpesh's argument, you say, where are the masses? What are the masses doing? Are they not seeing what's happening? No. I'm saying, to my question, if a despotic leader, ruler is doing whatever he or she is doing across the world, and this is not just restricted to India, the masses. What do the masses do in times like these, where information, which again comes back to a basic fact, when information is skewed, converted into a meme, tadka lagaki with some AI tool, if I tell someone that this is what happened in 1856, and I produce, 6 or 7 lengthy propositions backing that argument, which AI, ChatGPT, Claude, anyone will give me, how many people in the country will really have the ability to sift through the entire argument that may have been made? So is AI therefore a problem in this space?
I'm not going to talk about AI and things like that. I'm just going to take on from what Pushpesh ji said. I think he said something quite different. What he said is that, if there's a despotic ruler, it's up to the people of that country whom he's oppressing to fight that ruler and get rid of him. It's not anybody else's task. Absolutely. That's the point. The other point I'm trying to say is that, we forget that history is mauled, forgotten, like what Trump is doing, not just because they want to destroy history, but because they are serving very, very strong interests.
Corporate interests.
Vested interests. So you cannot separate that from the story. It's not just that किसी को history नहीं पता है तो वो चले गए वहाँ ये करने. It's not as simple as that. They have gone in there because they think it is going to serve the interests that they want to serve. One big interest is, of course, Israel. The other big interest is the oil conglomerates of the United States. And he keeps saying, he said a crazy thing yesterday before he said it. If oil prices go up, that's really great for America because we are the biggest oil producers in the world. So what he's doing is distorting the reality of the suffering of the people and trying to make it into something that ultimately you're going to benefit from this. So that's one aspect. The other aspect is to think of the masses as this kind of inert bunch of people who don't know anything, who are being fed all kinds of misinformation. Yes, of course they are, but they are also learning from their own lives, from the experience of their own lives. And that's where protest comes from.
Okay.
That's where Virod comes from. And that's where it's coming from. It's going to come everywhere. No despot, no bad government can avoid it for too long. They can fight some wars, they can do some Hindu-Muslim business, they can do this, that and the other, distort history. But ultimately, they are going to have to face the wrath of the masses who are being deprived of everything.
Okay, I'm told the 2 minutes that we have. I see a lot of young school kids. If any one of you would like to ask any question to anyone here, feel free. Anybody here or anybody has a thought?
The school kid
youngest
is right.
student
It's fine.
we have is
Anybody
pretty
there?
middle
आपसे
aged.
कोई कुछ पूछना चाहता है? Any one of you? You sure?
Whether we have learned the right lessons from history or not. Do the leaders of the world today have a plan, an idea as to where they want to take the masses?
Exactly.
Do they have an idea of that? And whether those ideas or the goals are justified for the entire world? My question is that, okay, you have learned the right lesson, but if you have definitive plans for one section of the society and you want to take the whole world into that direction, what will be the result?
I'll just give one line for context, and then Gurcharan, you can take it over. See, the point is, according to me, and unfortunately, we couldn't bring that subject here within the domain of this subject, this proposition. AI tools today, the big tech oligarchs of the world, are the ones who are controlling disproportionate volumes of assets, public influence, public opinion making. Till the time.
And historical narratives.
And historical narratives, of course. As long as you don't fix that bridge between what is being done by the Elon Musks of the world and Mark Zuckerbergs of the world, I'm not sure whether we will, end up getting into the right direction. Dr. Gurcharan.
No, you asked about the question that do the leaders have a plan? Now, unfortunately, my reading of history is that that's precisely what gets you into trouble. For all governments and right through history, it's ideology that has really been the biggest, as it were, the most toxic drug. And so really let the best thing is to let go. Let history unfold and not have grand plans. And that's what will teach things, basic things. Like it is when a country becomes economically strong, or when its people become economically at ease, it is then that country can become a great power. We start proclaiming that we are a great power, before
It's
that.
not going to happen.
And so so those are the simple things. You talk about the masses, they understand that.
Yeah.
And that's unfortunately, my answer to you is
Two short things. I think the problem is that history is already gone because geopolitics has taken over.
Absolutely.
And we never talked about the elephant in the room, that history is not the only discipline which makes us learn wrong lessons. So geography teaches us lessons, cartography teaches us lessons, and economics dominates it. Loswell said who gets what, when and how, or the production relations, as Marx unfashionable now said. The other thing is about the global history and the Indian history. There is one thing as global history, and then there is something Indian history, Chinese history, Middle Eastern history, and they are not always in consonance.
Yeah.
So is for us to learn
Figure
whatever
out.
lessons at our period.
Okay. One final way, yeah, bas. Time's up. Uske baad.
This person changed history. So then when you're saying ki, have we learned the lesson from history, and Donald Trump has done 10 wrong things by not seeing what all happened wrong with US, and now if he does something and it changes, so then we'll say yeah, he changed history. So then should we just keep seeing history and say कि ये पीछे ऐसे नहीं हुआ, आगे भी ऐसे नहीं होगा, or should a person go ahead and try and change it?
We have to question the motives. Why are they doing what they're doing? Unless you do that, if you
don't
think
question.
their motives are good ones, you can go along with them. But if you think the motivation itself is all wrong, then it's not important whether they've learned from history or not learned from history, because they're going to do what their motivations are making them.
But the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
You have to question the motivations. And I would say that when you say ideology is toxic and all the rest of it, sounds very good, it appeals to a lot of people. But then actually what you are saying is that free markets and completely deregulation of the economy, that's going to take you to...
that's also an ideology, I'm sorry.
That's what I was going to say. That is also an ideology, and I think it's a very toxic ideology, by the way. But anyway, but that has also landed us where we are today. The whole growth of the right wing globally the whole growth of this unbridled form of capitalism and
Lab or
imperialism
lobe?
is also.
Gurcharan gave us a good line. Lab or lobe? You know, we used to hear greed is good.
Where we are.
Now we have a new line. Lab or lobe?
Trump and Israel
Lab
in
or
Iran
lobe?
and
Lobe.
other things.
Lobe.
So all I was saying is, to answer your question about changing, this is a very human reaction. And John and I were just discussing yesterday that he's got he's a Polish background, and the Hitler's invasion of Poland in the late 30s was the first indication of what the Third Reich was going to do in the world and how it was going to change the world. And if at that time, we were talking that if we had to, at that time, the kind of drones and missiles we have today, which took down Khomeini a week ago, and if somebody had taken down Hitler at that time, history would have been different. So that's, I think, a very natural instinct to want to change it. With the if they had a Mossad type of training, that
Only
required.
only if.
Yeah.
I know.
So,
Okay.
Yeah.
The thing about history is that we can keep debating this, outside.
Decides who the drone is going to take out.
Okay, gentlemen, let's give a huge round of applause for all the participants and organizers here. It's been great chatting with all of you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
It is discussions like this that remind us how important it is to keep questioning, re-examining, and learning from history. So my sincere thanks to all the panelists. And of course, thank you to the audience for being such engaged part of the discussion. May I now request Jerry Pinto to please join us.
This one? This is Iran's colors one.
I'll take the lead.
Jerry, can you turn around? Toxic ideologies.
I really like the fact that you went to ChatGPT.
That photo.